So I think we can go live. Today is a special session. A lot has changed in Pakistan Stock Exchange. The index is at a 4-year high. It's up 40% over the last 12 months, beating all other asset classes such as gold, the dollar, putting money in the bank account. And not just have we seen this optimism in the market, and we published a comment that there are 23 companies which have even beaten Bitcoin in terms of performance. But you see this kind of recovery and inflection point in almost all the matrices which we see. For example, the number of companies which have gone public in the last 12 months is more than the total number of companies which went public in the 3 years preceding that. We have seen a pickup in new retail investors, although the number is still low. But categories like overseas Pakistanis, now there are 4,100 overseas Pakistanis who are investing in Pakistan Stock Exchange through Russian Digital, and also most importantly, the volumes have gone up. People in finance who are on this call will appreciate that the daily traded volume is perhaps the best indicator for the health of the financial market. And a couple of years ago, it was close to 30 to 40 million dollars. And last month, it reached a high of $400 million. It was the all-time high in terms of the number of stocks traded. And a lot of this change which we've seen is very, very recent. And it coincides also with the joining of Farrukh as the CEO of PSX, as well as the great change which SACP has enabled during this period. So I'm really delighted to have Farrukh join us. Farrukh has done one session with us before, I think, which was on Russian Digital. So like most people on this call, he used to live in London before going back, and he was the head of business development for Acumen Fund, which I think a lot of us on this call will be familiar with, perhaps the premier impact fund in the world. And he went back to Pakistan to take this role as the CEO of PSX. So a lot of the issues and concerns and the fears and the questions which we all have as overseas Pakistanis, he understands that because he is in the same camp. So thank you, Farrukh, for taking time for this webinar with us.
Thank you so much, Ali. Really pleasure to be having this conversation with you, and thank you to Ali and his colleagues for inviting me on this platform. And it's been I came back and landed in Karachi literally a couple of weeks before the lockdown started, end of February last year. So it's been a extremely exciting but challenging year, and I'm glad we should just look at straight causation. I came, things went up. That can be a simple explanation,
Absolutely.
but as always, the explanations are more complex. More complex than that. And the market, as indeed the economy, because in the end, the markets can't run away from the economy, has done well in the last, 12 to 15 months, despite all the challenges. But one thing, just in terms of many of your, perhaps they are informed or not. This is not really the first time that Pakistan's market has been, one of the top performers in the world. We have been in the top 5 performing markets, multiple times over the last decade since the market opened, in fact, to international investors back in 1991. Unfortunately, like a lot of other things, we don't do our PR very well, and we don't get the credit, for that over the years. And if you look at the over a long term, 10-year return on the Pakistan market compared to the MSCI Emerging Markets Index, it's handily outperformed it by a good, over 3% per annum dollar return. So we're talking dollars, not in a rupee return. It's been about just over 8.1, 8.3% versus just over 4.5% for the MSCI index. And most fund managers would give an arm and a leg to have that kind of outperformance over a period of 10 years. And it's interesting if you look at, because we also have Sharia screened stocks, and if you look at the KMI, which is the Sharia index, I mean that has over the last 10 years in dollar terms returned over 13% per annum. Vastly outperforming the MSCI emerging market index at the same time period. But as I said, and I'm really glad to be speaking on this platform because with all of you, with the kind of work, Ali, that you're doing, we will really only be able to share this story if we improve, brand Pakistan. Because despite such a big run up in the market, it's still one of the cheapest in terms of PEs in the region. It's still one of the highest dividend yields, in the region, and that's really because of this, brand and perception issue. But I think apart from that, as you were mentioning and I touched upon at the beginning, the reason why the market and the economy has done well is that we've, fortuitously as well as with a lot of effort, coped with the this pandemic, thank God, extremely well compared to a lot of other countries in the region. In fact, globally. So that has helped us because we bounced out of the lockdowns much earlier and sooner than most other countries in the region, and that gave our exporters an edge. Then the government, really took very aggressive, like most other governments, very aggressive monetary, fiscal, and particularly, I think it is important to talk about the social policies as well, and the digital use that was made by the SR's program, and that's when like Nadra been commended, all over the world. So people who really were suffering, the daily wage earners, were able to get money where they were in the cities or in the villages. So we didn't see mass migration and the virus spreading all over the country as we saw in some of the other countries. So I think there are a number of reasons why we have seen this outperformance, particularly over the last 12 months. Sorry, I hope I haven't gone on too long to your question.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And the format we will keep is that I'll do the moderated session with you for 30 minutes, and then we'll open up for question and answers. There are 42 people on the call right now, and I'm sure more will join and more will be on Facebook. And as you said that the returns on PSX have been far superior than most emerging markets, more than MSCI Emerging Markets Index. And like the technology stocks which are listed as a collective over the last 12 months, they're up more than 5 times. So that's a massive outperformance, and that will a lot of people on this call, because they invest in private companies, they will appreciate that. On the public market side also, there are technology companies which are listed, who are now getting rewarded and recognized by the markets, and which also opens up the opportunity for growth companies in sectors like digital to go public on the GEM board and the main board of PSX and raise money from the large domestic institutions, the pot of capital which cannot invest in startups yet. So can you tell us a bit about GEM board, and how can tech companies or digital early stage companies list on that? What are the requirements? Is there a size limit? Is it very expensive? What's the process like? And then I'll ask you a question about PSX on its own, because you mentioned the perception and brand problem, and a lot of people will be surprised that the exchange is a technology company. And the proof of that is, during the terrorist attack which you had, or during the COVID lockdown, the exchange never stopped working, because actually it's a technology platform, and all orders which are executed are electronic. So I would love to also get your views on that. So first on
Sure.
GEM market, and secondly a bit about PSX, who owns it, what's the organizational structure, and how robust are the technology platforms in it.
Sure. So on the GEM board and broadly on the tech sector, and you all would know it better than me, but it seems that there is good traction that's developed over the last 12 months, and Pakistani startups are increasingly attracting capital. And the GEM board that we've just launched a few months back in the middle of the pandemic, is focused both on tech, but really any small or medium-sized enterprises. So we've seen interest from other sectors as well, but obviously tech is particularly suited for this. And the idea was to have so the regulatory requirements and compliance is much simpler than coming to the main board. The costs of listing are minuscule. I think our listing fee is like 50,000 rupees versus millions for the main board. So it really is nominal, and I would think that this will help not just um, raise capital from the public markets for tech companies, but also at the early stage and at the VC stage, it will help companies make the case, because one of the biggest issues you have anywhere in the world, and it's more deeper in emerging markets, is exit for early stage investors and VC funders. And you can have your strategic sales, etc. But now hopefully you will also have the option of doing a IPO on the GEM board. So I would hope that this will help, in the full kind of value chain of capital raising, from the early stage where you would have the one potential exit by going public, and obviously you can do on the GEM board, you can do a capital raise and a sale of shares, one, either or both. You may be aware, recently the Pakistan Software Export Board, did an MOU with the PSX, where they have allocated some funds to help tech companies that want to go public. Where they will use those funds to help them with advisory fees, legal fees, listing fees, etc. So that is also a good development, which perhaps may not be that well known, which tech companies can reach out to PSEB and the IT ministry. And this budget that took place, that was announced on Friday, has also got I think good things for tech companies. A lot of the taxation issues, which were irritants for local tech companies, I believe have been addressed. So I hope that will give a further fill up to the sector here.
And the second question, which is on the PSX itself, can you tell us a bit more in terms of your recently?
Yeah, I mean, last year was particularly tough because we had not only the pandemic, and literally had to go into lockdown at very short notice, and then we had, as you mentioned, the terrorist attack. Then we had record rains and floods, which made access for a few days impossible. And thank God we didn't stop trading even for a second. Unlike again where some of the regional markets, had to that stop trading. We didn't stop trading for even a second. So we did test before we went into lockdown all our DR facilities, our business continuity processes, our work from home protocols, and you're only in a business like this, or like I suppose any business, only as strong as your weakest link. So we had to make sure that our brokers also were able to do that, because there's no point in having the exchange open if most of the brokers couldn't trade. And they also came up to the challenge extremely well, and implemented and executed on their work from home and BCP protocols. So yeah, I mean, exchange, the heart of the exchange is technology, and worked extremely well throughout this challenging year, and we are in the process of upgrading it now. So we are in the process of a large upgradation of our trading and surveillance system, and with that, maybe the background, as you mentioned, to touch upon, that over the last sort of couple of decades, we've gone through a major sort of reform process, and for some of you who may have left Pakistan some years back, you may not be aware, so it's worth understanding. And you mentioned SECP, how strong the regulatory framework is, both of the apex regulator, SECP, and the frontline regulator, PSX. It's absolutely up to international standard. If you look at the disclosure requirements of our annual accounts, absolutely up to international standard. In fact, I would say significantly better than in most other Asian markets. and uh, the all the trading is completely automated. So if you open an account through RDA, which we can touch upon a little later, you can open your account sitting wherever you are in the world. And if you use a platform, like KSB's trading platform, through the app online, and most of the brokers, large brokers would have it, but theirs is, I believe, I think, one of the best. Be able to trade from wherever you are in the world. And the custodian is separate. So all the shares are dematerialized. There is a separate national clearing company which looks after margin requirements. So the risk management is in fact extremely robust, and we particularly learned from the 2008 crisis, and it's a transformed exchange and regulatory system from what it was. And the last really building block in this reform process was the demutualization of the exchange. Like most exchange, PSX and its predecessor, Karachi Stock Exchange, which is one of the oldest exchanges in Asia, also started as a group of brokers getting together. But in recent times, as you know, because of conflicts perceived or real conflicts of interest, trading and ownership rights have been segregated. So PSX is a listed company itself. We did a strategic sale process. 40% is now owned by, and there were many exchanges from around the world that actually looked at it and came to bid. But three of the largest Chinese exchanges took a 40% stake, including Shenzhen, Shanghai, and China Futures Exchange. And we have just bought the trading engine and surveillance system from Shenzhen Exchange, and we are implementing that. And that will really take us well into the 21st century in terms of our trading technology and our ability to introduce new products like options, etc. And the balance about ownership is 40% is the Chinese exchanges consortium, about 15%, 16% is owned by foreign fund managers, and the balance is widely distributed in the domestic market.
Thank you for giving that overview, because I think there are many people who are not aware that APSX is a listed company. B, it has its own, in terms of controlling shareholders, it's owned by three of the largest exchanges in the world. And C, that it has the kind of technology which you mentioned, which allows seamless trading even without a physical infrastructure, even when with their climate and other kind of challenges. In fact, for our capital raise, when I was talking to investors, like the VC funds, they were not aware of all of that things. So thank you for bringing all of that up. We have already started receiving a lot of questions. I will get to the questions in 10 minutes. Before that, I'll sneak in two questions. The first is, you mentioned about the budget, and there seems to be a lot of excitement in the market about budgets. I've seen commentaries on Facebook, and Imran Khan has been sharing, his account has been sharing some commentary where everybody seems ecstatic about it. What are your views on the budget?
No, I think what I would say is, and we can go back and forth on a lot of numbers and proposals and all. One, it has been made under very difficult circumstances. I don't envy any finance minister trying to make a budget while within an IMF program, which are always generally deflationary, very constrictive. And if you're trying to go for growth within an IMF program, it's like trying to square the circle. So I think we have to keep that context in mind. I think, having said that, the biggest takeaway from me is that there are measures, like electricity tariff has not been increased, import duties, and a lot of raw materials has been reduced, which will help industrialization, growth, etc., which are all important. Capital gains tax has been partially rationalized on listed instruments. So all those are all good things. But the key thing is that no group of people, whether organized as a country or as a company, can really move ahead till there is, the morale is high, there is direction, and there is confidence. And I think that was the biggest thing about this budget. I think coming on top of a successful tackling of the pandemic, which had already started improving the business confidence, I think the budget has set the tone for positive, pro growth, and confidence in the economy to be able to go back to the IMF in the middle of the program and say that, look, we understand what you want us to do, we will do that, but we want to do it this way and not the way that you are mandating. That we have not seen in many times over the years where we've seen. So I think that's the biggest thing. You can feel the buzz, you can feel the activity, you can see the investments that are taking place. So I think that's the biggest. It's setting that tone, it's setting that positive vibe. I think that was the biggest takeaway, from this budget. And then there are loads of good and bad, detailed stuff.
Absolutely. So the optimism is there, and that's a good. That's the main thing because that will
Obviously,
drive
that,
people
that
to
is a
invest.
necessary but not a sufficient condition for a turnaround. But it is necessary to create that positivity and confidence. So now that they've done that, obviously it has to be followed by good, consistent, long-term policies. So hopefully that second step will also, come through.
And overseas Pakistanis. So you mentioned that now with Roshan Digital, overseas Pakistanis can invest. And I saw some numbers out there that around 4,100 Pakistanis have opened up Roshan Digital accounts and they are investing in stocks. That number is still a very small fraction of the overall RDA accounts which have opened up.
Yeah.
So can you touch upon that? The RDA account opening process, how easy, difficult it is. I think some people, banks are of course promoting the RDAs more and Naya Pakistan more, but we would love to hear from you about the Roshan Digital accounts and how can overseas Pakistanis invest in stocks.
I mean, the first thing that overseas Pakistanis investing in the PSX is actually the number is much larger than through the RDA. Because I said that the market opened for overseas investors in 91, and there is already an established way that overseas investor, which is called SCRA, or the Special Convertible Rupee Account, that is already there. So many overseas Pakistanis were either investing through that or just through their brothers or fathers or some sister, etc., and just settling in rupee. But what RDA has done is that it's made it very straightforward and simple to do that rather than doing it in a SCRA was also straightforward but a little bit more complex, and trying to do it in local settlement by sending dollars in and out was just more complicated. But the I think the important point to understand here is that 91 to date, billions of dollars have come in and out of the market. So the RDA account works exactly the way the SCRA account does. So the process of bringing money in, investing in the stock market, selling it, taking money out again is well established and has been happening for, as I said, decades now, and tens of billions of dollars of those transactions, have happened. RDA, and when we spoke with the central bank where it was being launched, that the stock market should also be linked in, is really a huge step forward, because not only for the first time is KYC being shared between banks and capital markets, but also for someone opening their account, they don't have to do the whole thing twice. You go simply open your RDA, you can open your brokerage account, with someone like KSP, and you can start trading, and you can take your dollars in, you can take your dollars out without any reference to central bank. So it's actually very, very straightforward. In Pakistan, actually over the decades has been probably one of the easiest developing markets to invest in. Um, and compared to the overall RDA, yes, the investment accounts or the brokerage accounts have been smaller, but opening a bank account is a much simpler decision. An investment decision is requires more thought, will take time. So I'm sure the door has been opened, the road has been made, and I have no doubt that traffic will flow.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning this point because you're right that when I mention this to people, a lot of people get surprised when they hear that all large global funds do invest in Pakistan. So
Yeah.
BlackRock, Templeton, Lazard, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, you name it, all the usual suspects, they do invest and have been investing in Pakistan since '92, and uh, it's a seamless process. They take money in and pull money out. Despite of that, despite the fact that these large institutions have been investing for a long time, overseas Pakistanis have so much fear that will our money be will we be allowed to take our money back? Will there be a lot of front running or insider trading, or will we lose our money? Will the broker run away with our money? So the fear seems to be much larger with individual shareholders compared to and large, some of the largest investors in the world who do all their DD before they step in. So thank you for bringing that up, because I'm sure that that will be that won't be
And
known to everybody on
to
this
the
call.
point, the point that you're making, I mean, your money, your funds, and again, it's up to you how you structure it. But your funds are, when you bring them in, are kept with the Central Depository Company of Pakistan. You don't have to keep them with the broker if you don't want to. And again, the securities, you can open a custody account directly with the Central Depository, or you can open a sub account with your broker. So it's really up to you. But if you want to be 110% secure, then you can just go through the option of keeping the funds with the central depository as well as keeping the securities directly with the central depository. So there is actually, except for that split instant when the broker is executing the transaction, there is no risk, on the broker apart from that.
Thank you for mentioning that. Um, we can move to the questions, because we have, and because this question has also come, and it reminds me of a story that I worked in Pakistan. I graduated from NUMS. My parents were in the academia, so I had nothing to do with capital markets. So I had all the preconceived notions which somebody going to London studying economics would have, coming from Islamabad. So I went to Oxford. We had a dinner with the chairman of Merrill Lynch. So at that time, Merrill had just published a report, a very bullish report in Pakistan. This is 2005, and they rated Pakistan as one of the top three markets. So at the dinner, being a cynical Pakistani, I asked him that, why are you so bullish in Pakistan? Aren't you afraid of insider trading and front running, like which happens in the market? Because surely we have read about it. And the guy, brushed my, he ignored my question. Like he said, like, firstly, there's not that much of that. B, it happens in every market. C, we are aware of the risks. So when we invest in a market, we are conscious of all the risks. So it was at that time, I found it very hard to digest, because here I was, a Rhodes Scholar studying at the most prestigious university, being trained to be cynical and skeptical on things, and his attitude and his question was very his response to my question was. I did not understand it. Later on, working in financial markets for 16 years and covering the US, Germany, UK, I understood exactly what he was talking about. And as you rightly pointed out, and so I have, as an emerging markets fund manager, I invested in most of the emerging markets. Pakistani corporate governance and transparency and controls are, I think, extreme. I think sometimes it's too rigid compared to other markets. But let me ask that question to you. Um, what are the controls there for market manipulation, or what are the controls and processes in place?
Look, the so also one of the questions about when the new system will be implemented. So we expect to implement it in over the next sort of month or two. We are at the final stages of testing, so it's actually in place, but we're doing the final testing of and it's being in the parallel run stage, and the surveillance system that comes with it will give us much vast greater ability to have real time alerts. If we feel that there is anything that's going on in the market, to be able to focus on it in real time, and then to investigate it. And we have also given access to the SECP, for this system. Now, there's some questions about large brokers manipulating the market, etc. And as you said, unfortunately, it happens in a lot of markets. That's not to condone it or anything, but I think the point that I would just like to make is, that and I get this question all the time that, what's the tip in the market? I'm sure you get that early as well. Give me a tip. I have money for 3 months. What should I do with it? What stock should I buy? And this equity markets, you got to take a long-term view. You have to invest for the long term. If there is excessive trading happening in a stock, there's a question about in the local market as well. Penny stock, there's heavy, trading happening. Something is shooting up, you don't have to invest in it. I mean, if you don't understand the investment thesis, you don't have to buy that stock and then say that somebody manipulated it and now it's falling down. Um, if you don't, just like in the U.S. market, if you don't have the time or the inclination or the knowledge of how to research and pick stocks, go through a good, mutual fund to get your exposure. We have just recently over this year also launched ETFs, which are a great way to get exposure to the Pakistan market through one trade, but having access to a diversified, basket of stocks. There's another question about value versus penny stocks. Yeah, I think value, those good stocks have been started catching up and will catch up. But value versus game store and all that other stuff, that nice stocks that have been ramping up in the US that you're seeing. um, it takes time. Sometimes value takes longer than we think it should to become apparent in pricing. But the thing is that when you invest, you have to have some investment thesis, not just because something is running up in the. You might, if you're a talented trader, all the best to you for doing that. But I think it's not perhaps fair to say there's not sufficient regulation because some price is going up and investors are trying to chase it, or traders are trying to chase it, and then suddenly the smart trader has gotten out of it and someone else is stuck. That's not really a lack of regulation, unless there is specific market manipulation that's happened. um, but
Absolutely. Thank you for answering that. And I totally get it. Like, and I'm sure a lot of people who do invest in US stocks understand and have seen that kind of volatility. I once wrote a report on a Swedish company, a fintech company, and that was, the initial boom of fintech in 2012-13. When I published the report, the stock moved up 100% in one day. And, the next day it came down 40%. Because just these are small stocks. So the volatility generally in small companies is high. Pakistan actually has circuit breakers, so it cannot move up more than 7% in one day,
that's right.
which
That's
it
right.
can
That's
in
right.
global markets. So,
Yeah.
so people who think Pakistani market is volatile should look at any European market or the US market, and they'll see more volatility. But your point, thank you for mentioning the fact that as you mentioned earlier, that over the long run data, you can take 20 years data, Pakistan market has outperformed. So whether somebody is what a broker is doing or not doing, it doesn't matter, because the market, we can pick data for as long as 25 years or even perhaps longer, and it's the returns are in excess of the returns in other asset classes and other emerging markets. Um, I'll go to the next question. So I'll just go one by one in the order they have come. So Asif Rao is asking that for an order to execute, what's the fastest response time? I don't know the answer to that, but
It is in terms of again, as you know, and you must have, what's the name of that famous book, where they I think it was Michael Lewis's, right? These traders dug and put their fiber in. So obviously, that makes a difference. So if you're trading sitting in the stock exchange building with direct access to our servers, it is faster by milliseconds, if not nanoseconds, than someone, say, sitting in the US, where it is literally the difference will be in milliseconds. So mostly you would not even notice it unless you really, as I said, had some algo trading going on where you got. And then if you're doing that, then you need to be in the building like anywhere else in the world. Otherwise, the system's latency is global standards.
thank you. The second question from Jalid, he's asking that how can we increase the access to Pakistani stocks from outside of Pakistan? For example,
We
he's
would
mentioned
love
that
to
they
do
have
that.
platforms like Schwab or Fidelity and
Yeah,
Interactive.
we would love to do that. And it's not something, to be honest, personally, I've focused on yet, but I'd love to focus on it. And if anyone on this platform has any thoughts, ideas, or in fact, contacts to help us develop that dialogue, we would really appreciate that.
So, and just FYI, I did speak to UKFCA because at one point I wanted to launch a platform here in the UK to offer Pakistani stocks, and UKFCA for the sandbox, they just uh, they don't encourage emerging markets. They want to encourage people to invest in the UK. So, but you're right, like it has to come from one of those entities because it's a commercial decision for them.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm sure some people on this platform, perhaps Jaleed, will have contacts at these
So
places.
if
So
you do,
Jaleed,
please, reach out to me, and I would really appreciate that.
Farhan is asking, how can somebody learn about investing in Pakistan? And would be great if you can talk a bit about DPS, your platform, because I think it's such a rich resource.
The learning about the stock exchange. Yeah, I mean, our website has a lot of detail. The data portal on our website has it's a rich resource. Um, but if it's just more general, then KSB, for example, has done great number of you've done a whole sort of series of articles and blogs, showing how to invest in the Pakistan market. But it is actually, so I don't know whether what Farhan is asking is how to learn just generally about investing in stocks, which is a more complex subject, and there are lots of good courses and books on that. But if you're talking about how to invest in the Pakistan Stock Exchange, but about stocks broadly, then it is actually really simple. If you say, especially now with RDA, just choose any of the banks, the 9 10 banks that are offering RDAs. On there, you'll see once you open the RDA account, you'll have the option to open a brokerage account. Click choose the broker that you like, and all that information, you don't have to repeat anything, will be shared by the bank with the broker. Your account will be open, generally within 24 to 48 hours, and you can start trading.
No, thank you, and thank you for mentioning KSP as well. We do try to provide information, and if anybody wants, I'm happy to help on that. But I really want to mention that PSX has a really good useful website. I use it all the time. It's called dps.psx.com.pk, and it has, you can go and pick up any company which is listed in Pakistan. In Pakistan, there are 500 odd some companies, and you can find their share price performance, the historical. You can find their financial statements, the circular notices, management background. It's an excellent resource which is for free. I don't find such free resources for even the UK or the US market. So it's a really good product. I recommend it. And if the question is that how can I invest, also PSX on their website they have a list of courses, and I noticed that there's a course from which Lums is offering. It's an online digitally offered course which is stock market 101. So if you want to enroll in a formal course, then Lums is doing that, and the information is on PSX website as well. Farzal is asking that what do you have to say about abolishment of capital value tax?
Um, I think maybe that's because capital value tax was abolished on stocks in the last budget, not this budget, last year. That was one of the first thing. It was again not a huge revenue source, extremely tedious for but if tax has is there like it is there in most places in the world, but the rate has been rationalized to bring it more in line with other regional countries.
Got it. Mohsin Mustafa has a great question. He's a very experienced guy, and he always asks really good questions. And he's asking that RDA has made it simpler for investors to open account, but what about a local investor? Will the onboarding be simplified for them as well? And if so, how soon will that become seamless?
Sorry, what was that question? I was
So,
sorry, just reading out the question
sorry,
as I come in.
onboarding for local investors. How will it become easy, just like
Absolutely.
RDA?
Yeah. Yeah, so we are already in discussions with the central bank, and in fact, regulation-wise, etc., it's already been agreed, and we have submitted both to SECP and to the central bank how it will work. It is a little bit more complex in the local environment, but it's been approved, and now we're working on how to link the systems between NCCPL, CDC, and the banks for a similar flow to RTA. So that'll take a couple of months, but yeah, it's absolutely going to happen, inshallah, in the local market as well, to make it as easy. But there are legacy issues in the local market because there are the accounts that are already open. They're not all digitized, so it's a little bit more complex in terms of sharing of KYC information. But the state bank itself in the local market is also moving to opening accounts digitally. For new accounts, it'll be much simpler. For older accounts, it's a little bit more complex, but yeah, but it's still going to happen.
Great news, and I'll also add that keep an eye on Jazz Cash's partnership, which they announced with us. That product will go live, and I think you'll like the digital onboarding process on that. And I think I noticed Rahim on this call from SECP, and SECP is working this a lot on improving the customer onboarding process. So I think they will be good. I'm very hopeful that in 6 months' time you will see substantial improvement on this, and because of that, you will see a spike up in number of retail investors in Pakistan. So stay tuned and keep an eye on it. There's another question, which is when will the new system, trading system and surveillance system be rolling out? I think you have already answered that question.
In the next couple of months, because we're the final stages of testing. It's in parallel run.
Dan has asked a question: when do you think will the next correction in the market? Now that I don't know if anybody knows, but
No, I don't think I can really speculate on that. I mean, Ali's research, you should read Ali's research to figure that out. When the
I
next
know
correction.
the crystal ball. We'll have to use the crystal ball for that. And then we have already spoken about this question about prop trading by brokers. As when we launched KSB, we don't do prop trading because we think it's a conflict of interest. I don't invest. Nevertheless, in global markets, like Goldman had a huge prop book. JP Morgan had a huge prop book. And if you remember back in 2008, this was a big conflict of interest, which was highlighted that when the crisis happened, one arm of Goldman was recommending people to buy the ABS and the other arm was selling it. So this is a problem of the conflict of interest. As I said, I am personally believe very strongly in solving it. That's why we as a company don't do it. But I don't, as we just discussed before, I think there's not that much issues which the question suggests. My wife is a fund manager at Aberdeen. They manage 800 billion. Her team manages 80 billion. Pakistan is a market they invest in. This is not a thing they are concerned about. So the point I'm trying to highlight is that people who are managing billions of dollars of money and do really, really detailed DD, and they're not worried about it. And but this is a problem. Farrukh, going back to this question about perception, how do you solve the perception problem of Pakistan? Because I think this question, and generally, it's manifestation of that lack of trust or perception problem which exists with PSX.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It is there, not just outside, but within Pakistan as well. And there is no shortcut to it. We have to earn people's trust. It is our responsibility to earn that trust, and we have to do it every day, because earning it is difficult, but losing it is extremely easy. Um, and I think some of the things that we've spoken about, the way the structure, the basic thing for trust, that the whole structure of the exchange has been completely changed from an exchange owned by brokers, controlled by brokers, which may have real or perceived conflicts of interest, to a completely demutualized exchange, which is owned by some of the largest exchanges in the world. State of the art technology is being deployed. Is itself a listed company, so has to comply with its own corporate governance and regulatory standards. Um, will I think over time continue to improve and build that trust. Um, I also saw a question here that foreigners are a balancing force, but they have been selling. Yeah, like particularly in the COVID situation, a lot of emerging markets saw for foreign selling, but Pakistan we've seen that over the last 2-3 years. Although recently we've seen flows coming in as well. But to be honest, I think that's encouraging. I think in years gone by, if we'd seen such consistent foreign selling, the market would have completely tanked. But I think it's good that the local investors are showing the confidence. Not only has the foreign selling been fully absorbed, but the market, as Ali was mentioning, has gone up, over 40%. Showing that there is local liquidity, showing that local investors do have that confidence, and I think that's good. I think if we build up the market, with the local investors, I'm sure the international investors will come, and they've been present in the market, since '91 in very very large manner. So those cycles come. Sometimes it's not just the country's issue. That there are global mindsets and global trends which dictate these flows
Absolutely,
as
the
well.
cycles will turn, and I'm very optimistic about it. Generally, at this Park launch forum, we are generally optimistic about Pakistan's prospect. So I can perhaps again give a hint that just give me 2 weeks. There will be some announcement about this as well. We will announce something about some global top 10 a global institution getting involved in Pakistan, inshallah. So keep posted on that. But as I said, like मैं इस बात को I'm emphasizing on it. We even made a video series about it called "Complain Na Karo, Invest Karo," because I do feel that we as a nation are sometimes overly pessimistic about things which we should be proud of, and PSX performance certainly is something which is something which we should be proud of. This is why I left my role in London to build this business, and which is why global investors like Tencent Group, TTB Partners, Hoff Capital from US, um, Bitrate Capital, they have all invested in us for building this business. So there's a lot of optimism out there, and let's all keep positive. There's a really good question from Usman Yusuf, and he's asking, he's saying, thank you, Farrukh. What are the top 3 interventions or initiatives you wish you could have taken at PSX but aren't able to do just yet? I think it's a great question.
Um, there is a lot that needs to be done. And there is no particular reason why I've not been able to do them, except that one has to prioritize. There's a question of bandwidth. There's a question of how many new initiatives that one should take, at any one point in time in an organization. Um, but I think the key initiative that we are taking, but and the kind of the Jazz Cash initiative that Ali was mentioning, because that can only happen with the support of the brokers, is that we do need to increase our investor base. And we've taken some initiative connecting it to another question I thought, that we have a younger population. How are we encouraging younger people to invest in? So we have something called the Sahulat account, where if you open an account for under 8 lakh rupees, the KYC and source of income, etc., requirements are more or less waived. There's very very simple in it, and then the idea is to encourage younger people, but also people who may have just retired. They just want to try out and start investing in the stock market. Um, and the other thing that we would like to do is to really revamp our futures market, our derivatives market. In most markets in the world, the derivatives volume is many times the ready board or the cash market volume, whereas in Pakistan it's the opposite. The ready board is about 70%, and the futures market, which is the main derivative that we have right now, is about 70%. So it's taken us a bit longer, but we'll see. Hopefully, be able to make some announcements in the next week to 2 weeks of starting 90-day futures, expanding the list of companies in the futures board. And similarly, once the new system has been implemented, and that was a constraint, we'll be able to launch, stock index options, as well as, individual, stock options. So those are things that we wanted to do, but were not able to do, not just because of bandwidth, but also because of our existing system constraint. So we were waiting for the new, system to come in. I guess the third thing which I would like to do is there are still some regulations that I would like simplified on the IPO side, and we've started listing the SPACs. I saw a question on SPACs. The SPAC regulations out for public comment, and I would like to make those simpler, not both for traditional IPOs as well as non-traditional IPO routes. And there, we don't always get them as simple as we would like them to be.
Thank you. I was about to go over that question on SPAC. You've already answered that question. We have 8 minutes left. There is one question about REITs. And he's saying, what are you doing to bring in more of the real estate sector into PSX? I feel that out of all the sectors, the one that our investors have the least exposure to via PSX is real estate. Do you have more work going into getting more REITs into PSX? Great question. I think it's a very relevant question.
Then absolutely, and particularly not just other markets in Asia, one of the largest sectors in any stock exchange is the real estate sector, and in Pakistan it's almost sort of non-existent. So we worked very hard with SECP and with the Ministry of Finance to make the REITs rules easier, and there's a lot of progress that's been made, particularly last week. Many of the issues that were sort of irritating the development of the REIT sector have been sorted out by the SCCP, and that's been a really good step. Most of the tax issues are also resolved, so I think we will see a number of REITs coming up this year for listing on the exchange. I know of at least 3, 4 that are already at different stages of being structured and coming to PSX.
Great. And Pakistan, Hashim is pointing out that Pakistan has a very young population. And are there any plans to incentivize millennials and Gen Zs to begin investing on PSX?
I mentioned that Sahulat account, where it's easier for young people who may have limited funds to at least start getting an exposure. But I think the key thing is also the digitization and the kind of work that you're doing with Jazz Cash and with your app, etc., K-Trade. They don't particularly like to call up brokers and talk to them and place the orders. They want it on their phone. And although most brokers have, not most brokers, but most of the larger brokers have such apps, etc. But really, they're not. There's work I think to be done, and I think the kind of work that you're doing, I think is particularly will attract that generation.
Yes. So we will certainly invest a lot, and we are doing it. So, for example, right now we are running something called Trading Titan competition. 2,000 students are participating in it. Before that, we also sponsored the trading competition at LUMS, IBA Karachi, and as well as IBA Sakhar. So collectively, we have already trained around 3,500 Pakistani students on how to invest, and they are already doing that with K-Trade app. So, and with our recent capital raise, we will be investing a lot in educating people, and especially at a younger age, and facilitating them on how to invest. And I've already spoken a lot about that. There's a great question by Ali Khan, and he's asking, what are the cyber risks that PSX is seeing with its current model? Are we prepared for the risks? And I did hear that there was some cyber attack on PSX, which you did deal of, so nobody found out about it, but there was something. So would love to hear this about cybersecurity at PSX.
So, I mean, cybersecurity, and again, many people on this platform would know better than me personally, but obviously we have, a highly qualified IT team and experts that work with us. It's something that we are very focused on. We constantly do get attacks. I mean, there are thousands and if not tens of thousands of attacks that happen, not just on us, on any global organization. Um, so we do have robust systems, both ourselves as well as our associated SROs, the CDC, NCCPL, to defend them. And as I said, so far, we've been able to, successfully do that. Along with that, we do have, and particularly with this new system, if something happens and the system for some reason, the main system stops working, it'll automatically switch to a backup, that'll happen in split seconds for trading to continue. And then there are cold DR sites, which can also be activated, but that obviously activating a cold DR site, takes a little bit of time, but within manageable hours, that can also be done. So it's a constant effort, and we are extremely conscious of it. And both at the board level, myself, we stay on top of it. And I said we have experts who work within PSX and our subsidiary associated companies, and we are staying on top of it so far.
There's a question, or rather comment from and Nadeem Saab. He's referring to his working paper where he has analyzed shareholding structures of companies and shown that there's concentration, the same point which Mehboob Haq had mentioned. I wrote a report on it back in 2018 as well. I think you saw that. And and that's true, Pakistan, like Korea or like many emerging markets, has concentration of ownership. Um, and and small circles are everywhere. As in, he mentions the board presence, and he's referring that to as Sindh Club, a group. But I suspect we see that everywhere, right? Like there are only 5 or 6 people who keep on becoming the finance minister again and again in different government. The same people who keep on becoming economic advisors and chairmen of economic boards at all the companies. Probably like more, not more than 10, perhaps even 5. So I don't think that's a PSX question which you can solve, or like as an entity. That's a Pakistan question.
I think Nadeem Saab makes a good point, and it is something which we um, again, as you said, it's not just a PSX question, but it is something which, as the market grows, as the number of investors grow, as the number of new companies grows, and particularly as new sectors grow. So, which is why we're so keen on encouraging, small medium companies to come through. As some of the tech companies, will come through, they inevitably will bring new entrepreneurs who may, will, or in most cases, not be from the traditional business families, and that'll help to expand this small club that Nadeem Saab said. I'm not sure if it's as small as that, but regardless, whether it's 30 or whether it's 35 or it's 40, it is small, and we would absolutely do whatever we can to help expand that. But it's not all in PSX's control. It's to do with the structure of the economy. And as I said, as new sectors like real estate, tech, agriculture, those come forward, the grip of this will also become less.
Absolutely, and I think that's the power of technology, and that's the power of startups, that that they are raising funding internationally, and there's no there is no inheritance on ideas. So while there is on capital, and that cannot be the inheritance of capital, we cannot stop, but inheritance of ideas, there is none such. So there is hope that with platforms such as Spark Launch, where like I think 45 companies have now raised money through the angel network which exists over here. Entrepreneurs are getting access to capital, and hopefully we will see those companies go public at PSX in the gem market, which we discussed earlier. I'm conscious that we've run out of time, but I'll just sneak in one question, Farrukh Saab. I know it's late at your end, which is on ESG. And Jaleed is asking that PSX is running an initiative on collecting sustainability data. What's the timeline to make this data available? Because as you know that ESG, I'm conscious that you're aware of the importance of ESG, especially for foreign investors.
Yeah. The so we are I mean ESG is important, is hugely important. The disclosure requirements need to happen at the company level before we can aggregate the data, and it's work in progress in even in the most developed markets. But we are working. In fact, just over these last 2 3 weeks, we've accelerated the effort. We are also working with Pakistan Institute of Corporate Governance, and we want to create a task force, pull in the Institute of Chartered Accountants, pull in some other stakeholders to really be able to create a roadmap over the next 5 years, that how do we move down this in a meaningful manner and not just pay lip service. And we're already seeing many of the export oriented companies, because they're getting the pressure not from investors but from their buyers, to be more ESG conscious, focusing on SDGs, and critically disclosing the data, so that what effort they're making can be seen. And similarly, the investors, I think there's probably hardly any mandate that's probably given these days that doesn't have a fund management mandate that doesn't have an ESG component. So we want to work with the companies that, look, over time you'll start losing access to capital if there isn't focus on ESG and proper disclosure of it. So we are working on it, and it's something that the board is extremely conscious of as well. Our new chairperson is also extremely keen on this. So we will I think have some good announcements coming out in the coming quarter.
That's great. No, thank you so much. And as you said that, the proof is in the performance. So it's a fact that PSX has outperformed all other markets over the last 25 years. It's a fact. It's a fact that the stock market is up 40% this year in the last 12 months. And all the other things in terms of improvement in the number of companies which are listing, volumes, improvement in the volumes, RDA. These are things which are actually happening, and it's important to cherish this, because otherwise we can remain cynical and not do anything. And I suspect this is the old guard versus the new guard thing, that a lot of people in the old school, they're holding on to the perceptions which they have, but that's the power of tech as well. That's why it's not the old guys who are running tech companies, not the old families or the old people. It's the new guys who are investing, and which is why we do see the change. Thank you so much, Farrukh, for your time, and best of luck for all the initiatives that you're doing.
And thank you so much, and thank you for having me. And I just saw the message from Ali at Park Launch, and we would love to coordinate and take up your offer of coming and meeting some of the diaspora on your platform. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Khuda Hafiz.
Khuda Hafiz.